My biggest regret is sitting right there, my mother said, lifting her champagne glass toward me at Christmas dinner as if I were a stain on the tablecloth instead of her 29-year-old daughter. My name is Emma Whitmore, and until that night in Portland, Maine, I thought I had already heard the worst my family could say about me. I was wrong. My mother smiled at everyone in our packed dining room above my parents' seafood restaurant and continued, "To my biggest regret, my daughter, who still can't afford rent." My cousins laughed first. Then my father chuckled like he had been waiting for permission. He tapped his glass and added, "Honestly, Patricia and I should have stopped at 2 kids." Across from me, my sister's husband leaned toward her and whispered loudly enough for the entire table to hear, "Glad our kids won't turn out like her." The laughter got louder. My sister covered her mouth, not to stop herself from laughing, but to pretend she was embarrassed. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I finished cutting the last piece of roasted chicken on my plate and chewed slowly while every person who had once called me family watched for me to break. They thought my cheap apartment, my used coat, and my quiet job meant I was failing. They didn't know I had spent the last 18 months becoming the one person they could not afford to insult. When I finally put down my fork, I looked at my mother, then my father, then my sister, and her husband. "By New Year's," I said calmly, "you'll all be begging for my forgiveness." They laughed even harder. 2 weeks later, I woke up to 78 missed calls, my mother texting, "Please pick up. I didn't mean it." And my sister writing, "Hey sis, this isn't funny anymore." Before I tell you how a Christmas toast destroyed everything they thought they controlled, tell me this. What time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The funny thing about humiliation is that it does not always explode right away. Sometimes it sits quietly in your chest while you drive home through freezing rain, hands steady on the wheel, face calm in the reflection of the windshield. That was how I left Christmas dinner. No slammed door. No crying scene in the driveway. No dramatic speech on the sidewalk while everyone watched from the windows. I simply thanked no one, took my coat from the back of the chair, and walked down the stairs from the private dining room into the alley behind Whitmore's Pier House, the restaurant my parents loved to call the heart of the family. The same family heart that had apparently decided I was a joke worth toasting. My apartment was 12 minutes away, above a closed print shop with pipes that knocked at night and windows that let in winter air. That apartment was the reason they mocked me. They thought I lived there because I was broke. They didn't know I lived there because it was the cheapest place I could find, while I poured every spare dollar into something much bigger. For nearly 2 years, I had worked as a commercial lease compliance analyst for a private real estate firm. My job was not glamorous. I reviewed leases, checked insurance certificates, flagged unpaid common area fees, tracked unauthorized renovations, and found every quiet little violation business owners pretended did not matter until money was on the line. My family never asked what I actually did. They heard office job, saw my old Honda, and decided I was a failure. What they did not know was that 6 months earlier, through an LLC named North Lantern Holdings, I had purchased Harborline Row, the aging brick building that sat behind the restaurant and connected to 3 businesses: my father's storage kitchen, my sister Lauren's event planning studio, and the expansion space my brother-in-law Travis used for his private catering clients. They had no idea their rent checks, their renewal requests, their unpaid maintenance fees, and their little unauthorized side deals had all been landing on my desk through Daniel Price, the property manager. I had not bought the building to punish them. I bought it because my grandmother once told me that whoever controlled the back doors controlled the whole pier, and the old owner was desperate to sell before the city inspection season. I made a quiet offer, used years of savings, took a frightening loan, and told no one. For months, I had even protected my family from consequences. I approved a late payment from my sister. I delayed an inspection notice for my father. I ignored the fact that Travis had knocked down a non-load-bearing wall without written permission because I believed family deserved grace. On Christmas night, as I sat at my tiny kitchen table still wearing the sweater my mother had mocked as thrift store festive, I opened my laptop. There were 3 folders on my desktop: leases, violations, and renewal decisions. I stared at them for a long time. A decent person might have slept on it. A younger version of me would have begged for an apology first. But sitting there with their laughter still ringing in my ears, I finally understood something that changed me. Some people do not see your kindness as love. They see it as weakness they are entitled to keep using. So I opened the first file, the one labeled Whitmore Family Tenant Review, and for the first time since buying Harborline Row, I stopped protecting them from the truth. The next morning, my phone was silent, and that silence told me more than any apology could have. My mother did not call to say she had gone too far. My father did not text to check if I got home safely. Lauren did not send one of her fake little, mom gets dramatic messages. Travis, of course, said nothing because men like him only speak loudly when they think the room is on their side. By 10 o'clock, I was already at my desk in the real estate firm's downtown office, wearing black slacks, a cream blouse, and the same calm face I wore whenever I reviewed a client's failing lease package. My coworker asked if I had a good Christmas. I said, "It was useful." That was the most honest answer I could give. By noon, I had printed every document connected to Harborline Row. The master lease for the storage kitchen showed my father had been subleasing freezer space to 2 outside seafood vendors without permission. The studio lease showed Lauren was 3 months behind on shared utility reimbursements, but she had still posted photos online of a luxury client retreat she hosted in the very space she claimed she could barely afford. Travis's file was worse. He had used part of the building for private events after midnight, served alcohol without providing the required insurance rider, and installed electrical equipment without permits. If the city inspector had walked in on the wrong day, my building could have been fined, my insurance could have been canceled, and North Lantern Holdings could have taken the hit. That meant I was not dealing with a family disagreement anymore. I was dealing with risk, liability, and a group of people who had mocked me while quietly benefiting from my restraint. I called Daniel Price first. He had managed waterfront properties for 20 years and had the patient voice of a man who had seen every kind of tenant lie. "Emma," he said, "I wondered when you were going to stop giving them extensions." I closed my eyes for a second because even he had noticed. "Today," I said, "start formal compliance review on all 3 spaces. No special treatment. Everything by the lease." There was a pause, then he said, "You know they're going to panic when they find out." I looked at the Christmas photo my mother had posted online the night before. Everyone smiling around the table, me cropped halfway out on the edge. The caption said, "Blessed with the family that truly shows up." I almost laughed. "They should have thought of that before the toast," I said. After work, I drove to Harborline Row and parked across the street. The building looked ordinary from outside. 3 stories of old brick, dark green trim, and weathered windows facing the harbor wind. To my family, it was just the backside of their little kingdom. To me, it was 18 months of sacrifice, fear, paperwork, skipped vacations, instant noodles, and waking up at 5 a.m. to handle freelance lease audits before my regular job. I remembered every birthday dinner where my mother introduced Lauren as our successful one, and me as still figuring things out. I remembered my father telling relatives I was book smart, but not life smart. I remembered Travis asking if I needed him to explain mortgages in simple terms, while he was sitting in a space whose landlord was secretly me. I stood there in the cold and asked myself one question. If they had known I owned the building, would they have respected me? Or would they have simply found a better way to use me? The answer came quickly, and it hurt less than I expected. They would not have loved me more. They would have behaved better only because I had something they wanted. That was not love. That was calculation. So I took one last look at the windows glowing above the pier and sent Daniel a message. Issue notices tomorrow morning. The first notice went out at 8:12 a.m. on December 27th. Daniel copied me on the email because, legally, I was still just the owner behind the LLC, not the face they expected to see. The message was polite, professional, and deadly. It informed Whitmore's Pier House that the storage kitchen was under compliance review for unauthorized subleasing, unpaid maintenance charges, and unapproved alterations. They had 5 business days to cure the violations or face non-renewal. At 8:31, my father called Daniel. At 8:44, my mother called Daniel. At 9:03, Lauren called Daniel and tried to sound important. At 9:17, Travis sent an email using words he had clearly Googled, like bad faith, harassment, and retaliatory conduct. None of them called me. That was the beautiful part. They still thought I was the broke daughter in the cheap apartment, too irrelevant to connect to anything important. Around lunch, Lauren finally texted me, but not to apologize. Mom says you were rude leaving Christmas. You need to stop being so sensitive. Also, do you know anyone in your office who understands commercial leases? We're dealing with some ridiculous landlord drama. I stared at that message for a full minute. There it was. The entire family dynamic in 2 sentences. I was too pathetic to respect, but useful enough to ask for free help. I typed, "Sounds serious. You should read your lease carefully." She replied with a laughing emoji. "Very funny. I'm serious." I did not respond. That evening, my mother called me for the first time since Christmas. Her voice was sharp, not sorry. "Emma, your sister said you're ignoring her. That's childish." I put the phone on speaker while I folded laundry. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom." She sighed like I had inconvenienced her. "Don't start. What I said at dinner was a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke." "I didn't. That's because you always choose to be wounded." I stopped folding. There are sentences that do not just hurt. They clarify. My mother had not called because she regretted humiliating me. She had called because my silence was making her uncomfortable. She continued, "Besides, you embarrassed me by walking out. People noticed." I almost said, "Good." Instead, I asked, "Is that what you're worried about? People noticing?" She got quiet for half a second, then changed the subject. "Your father is dealing with a nightmare because some faceless landlord is threatening the business. After everything we've built, can you believe that? Rich people buy buildings and think they can play with families." I looked around my small apartment, the chipped mug on my counter, the secondhand couch, the stack of lease binders by my desk. Rich people. That was what she thought I was not. "Maybe the landlord just wants the rules followed," I said. "You wouldn't understand," she snapped. "This is grown-up pressure." I smiled then, not because it was funny, but because something inside me had finally stopped begging to be seen. "You're right," I said. "I probably wouldn't." She hung up first, probably proud of herself for winning. The next day, Daniel forwarded the first official response from Travis. He had attached photos, receipts, and a letter claiming he had verbal permission from family ownership to use the space however he wanted. The problem was that there was no family ownership. There was North Lantern Holdings. There was me. And his own attachment showed a wall removed without approval, event tables stored in a fire exit path, and portable cooking equipment plugged into an outlet clearly marked not for commercial load. It was almost generous of him to document his own violations. I forwarded everything to Meredith Cole, the attorney who had handled my purchase. Her response was brief. "This is stronger than we expected. Do you want enforcement or settlement? I thought about my mother raising her glass, my father saying they should have stopped at 2 kids, Travis talking about his children as if I were a disease they might catch. Then I thought about the years before that, the softer cuts, the little dismissals, the way every achievement of mine had been made invisible because it did not fit their version of success. I wrote back, enforcement, but keep it clean. I don't want revenge that breaks the law. I want consequences that stand up in court. By December 30th, the entire family was in panic, but they still did not know they were panicking in front of the person they had mocked. My father called me at 7:05 that morning, which was unusual because he believed phone calls before 9 were only for emergencies or people who did not have real responsibilities. I let it ring twice before answering. Emma, he said, skipping hello. Do you still work with lease paperwork? Not. How are you? Not. I'm sorry about Christmas. Just straight to what he needed. Yes, I said. Why? He lowered his voice like someone might be listening. We have a situation with the building behind the restaurant. Some investment company owns it now. North Lantern something. They're threatening us over technicalities. Technicalities. Unauthorized subleases, safety violations, unpaid reimbursements, and unpermitted work had become technicalities because they were his. That sounds stressful, I said. It is, he snapped, then softened only because he needed me. Look, I know your mother teased you the other night, but family is family. I need you to look at these documents and tell me how to shut this landlord down. I closed my laptop slowly. Dad, did you just ask the daughter you laughed at for being unable to afford rent to help you fight a commercial landlord? Silence, then irritation. Don't twist this into drama. I'm not twisting anything. I'm repeating the situation. He exhaled hard. Emma, this business feeds this family. Does it? I asked. Or does everyone just say that whenever they want someone to stop asking questions? His voice turned cold. You watch your tone. You may be 29, but I'm still your father. There it was, the old lever. Respect as obedience, family as a muzzle. And I'm still the person you humiliated at Christmas dinner, I said. You should call a lawyer. He hung up. 20 minutes later, Lauren texted, What did you say to Dad? He's furious. Can you not make everything about you for once? I replied, Ask Travis about the wall he removed. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. That afternoon, Daniel called to say Travis had shown up at the management office in person, red-faced and sweating, demanding to know the real owner of North Lantern Holdings. Daniel, bless him, told Travis what he had been legally instructed to say. All communication must go through counsel. Travis apparently slammed his hand on the counter and said, Do you know who my family is? Daniel replied, A tenant under review. I wished I had seen his face. Later that evening, I received an email from Meredith with scanned copies of something my father had sent to prove long-standing permission to use the property. One document had my grandmother's name on it, supposedly granting the family broad access rights years earlier. I stared at the signature until my stomach tightened. My grandmother's real signature had a long, elegant loop under the W in Whitmore. This one did not. I knew because I still had birthday cards from her in a shoebox under my bed. I sent Meredith a photo of one. Her reply came 15 minutes later. Do not discuss this with your family. This may be a forged document. I sat back, and for the first time the revenge stopped feeling satisfying and started feeling bigger than me. I had expected entitlement. I had expected denial. I had even expected threats. But forgery? Using my dead grandmother's name to bully a landlord they thought was a stranger? That crossed a line I could not uncross. I did not sleep much that night, not because I was scared of them, but because I finally saw the shape of the truth. My family had not simply underestimated me. They had built their comfort on the belief that rules were for other people, apologies were for weaker people, and I would always be too hungry for love to hold them accountable. The next morning was New Year's Eve. At 9 a.m., Meredith filed a formal notice rejecting the forged permission letter, demanding all original documents, and suspending renewal discussions until the compliance issues were resolved. At 9:26, my father called. At 9:27, my mother called. At 9:28, Lauren called. Travis called 3 times from a blocked number. I did not answer. I poured coffee, opened my blinds, and watched snow begin to fall over Portland. My prediction had been off by one day. They were not begging yet, but they were close. New Year's Eve should have been loud, glittering, and full of fake family posts, but mine was quiet. I spent the morning with Meredith in her office overlooking Commercial Street, while gulls screamed over the harbor and tourists took cheerful photos outside restaurants that had no idea a family war was unfolding 2 blocks away. Meredith laid the documents across her conference table in neat rows. The leases, the unpaid invoices, the photos Travis had accidentally incriminated himself with. The questionable letter bearing my grandmother's name. "Emma," she said gently, "you have enough to terminate or refuse renewal on multiple grounds, but because they are family, I want you to be certain before we proceed." I appreciated that she said, "Because they are family," without using it as a weapon. That was new to me. I looked at the papers and remembered being 7 years old, bringing home a drawing that my teacher had praised, only for my mother to say Lauren's handwriting was neater. I remembered being 16, winning a scholarship essay contest, and my father telling people it was only local. I remembered being 24, helping Lauren rewrite her business proposal overnight, then watching her accept applause at dinner while telling everyone she had built everything alone. I remembered every small moment when I had swallowed my own value to keep peace at a table, where peace only meant I stayed quiet. "I'm certain," I said. Meredith nodded. "Then we send the final notices today." By noon, Daniel served 3 separate letters. Whitmore's Pier House had to cure violations and pay outstanding charges within 5 business days, or face loss of access to the rear kitchen. Lauren's studio received notice of default for unpaid reimbursements and unauthorized use of common areas. Travis received immediate demand to cease private events in the expansion space pending inspection and proof of insurance. But the most important letter was addressed to all tenants. North Lantern Holdings would not consider any renewal, extension, discount, waiver, or side agreement until all violations were cured, all balances paid, and all questionable documents explained through counsel. The letters did not say my name. They did not need to. At 2:14 p.m., my mother texted, "Emma, call me. Something terrible is happening." At 2:20, "Your father is about to have a heart attack." At 2:33, "I know Christmas got awkward, but this is not the time to punish us by ignoring family. Punish us." That was the first time she used the word, and she still thought my silence was the punishment, not their behavior. At 3:05, Lauren sent, "Hey sis, can you please just tell me what to say to these people? Travis is freaking out and Mom is crying. This isn't funny anymore." There it was, almost exactly as I had known it would come. Not, "I'm sorry we laughed at you." Not, "We were cruel." Just, "Help us because our lives are uncomfortable now." I did not respond. Instead, I went to my apartment, showered, and put on the navy dress I had bought months earlier for a closing meeting. Then I drove to Harborline Row for the scheduled 5 p.m. inspection. Daniel was there. Meredith was there. The city inspector was there. My family was there too, though none of them expected me. My mother stood beside the back entrance in a wool coat, eyes red, talking rapidly to my father. Lauren paced near the curb, phone pressed to her ear. Travis looked furious in that performative way men use when fear is too embarrassing to show. When I stepped out of my car, Lauren glanced over, annoyed. "Emma, seriously? We don't have time for this right now." My father looked at my dress, my folder, then Meredith standing beside me. Confusion passed over his face. "What are you doing here?" I walked up the salted sidewalk, my heels clicking against the concrete. Daniel handed me the inspection packet and said, loud enough for all of them to hear, "Ms. Whitmore, we're ready whenever you are." My mother blinked. Lauren stopped pacing. Travis lowered his phone. My father's face changed slowly, as if his mind was refusing to arrange the pieces into a picture he could bear to see. "Ms. Whitmore?" he repeated. I opened the folder. "North Lantern Holdings owns Harborline Row," I said. "I own North Lantern Holdings." No one laughed that time. For once, every person who had laughed at me on Christmas stood completely silent. My mother was the first to speak. But even then, she did not choose the right words. "Emma, don't be ridiculous," she whispered, as if ownership were an attitude problem I could be scolded out of. "Tell them you're joking." I looked at her for a long second. This was the woman who had raised a glass to my humiliation in a room full of people, and now she wanted reality to be a joke because the joke was no longer on me. "I'm not joking," I said. Travis stepped forward, pointing at the building. "There's no way you own this. You can't even afford a decent apartment." Meredith's voice cut in before mine could. "Mr. Bennett, I'd advise you to stop speaking unless your attorney is present." He looked at her, then at me, and I watched the exact moment he understood I had not arrived alone, emotional or unprepared. Lauren's face had gone pale. "Emma," she said softly, suddenly remembering we were sisters, "why didn't you tell us?" I almost laughed, but I didn't. "When would you have listened? Before or after your husband said he was glad your kids wouldn't turn out like me?" Her eyes filled, but I had known Lauren long enough to recognize tears of fear, not remorse. My father cleared his throat and tried to recover authority. "This is family property in spirit," he said. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you for threatening us." That was when the last soft part of me hardened. I took the copy of the questionable permission letter from Meredith's folder and held it up. "Do not use Grandma to protect a document that may have forged her name." My mother gasped. My father's mouth opened, then closed. Travis looked at Lauren. Lauren looked at the ground. The city inspector shifted uncomfortably, but kept taking notes. "We can explain that," my father said, but his voice had lost its weight. "Then explain it through counsel," Meredith replied. The inspection began, and it was worse than even the photos suggested. The blocked fire exit, the overloaded outlet, the unapproved cooking setup, the storage freezer rented to outside vendors, the missing insurance rider. Every few minutes, the inspector asked a question, and every answer made my family look smaller. By the time we finished, the restaurant's rear kitchen access was temporarily restricted pending corrections. Travis's event operation was shut down, and Lauren's studio could not host clients until the common area violations were resolved. It was not dramatic in the way movies are dramatic. No one screamed. No one was dragged away. But watching people who had built their pride on looking superior suddenly face consequences they could not insult their way out of was its own kind of thunder. As the inspector left, my mother grabbed my arm. "Please," she said. That one word sounded strange from her mouth. "Emma, please. We didn't know." I gently removed her hand. "You didn't know what? That I owned the building, or that I was a person?" Her face crumpled. "I didn't mean what I said at Christmas." "Yes, you did," I said. "You just didn't know it would cost you." Lauren began crying harder. "Sis, please. Travis has deposits for January events. If we can't use the space, we'll lose clients. We could lose everything." I looked at Travis. Maybe he should have read the lease before mocking the person who enforces them for a living. Travis flushed but said nothing. My father's shoulders dropped in a way I had never seen before. He looked old suddenly, not because of age but because his authority had been removed from him and he did not know who he was without it. "What do you want?" he asked. It was the first honest question he had asked me in years. I could have demanded public apologies, money, humiliation equal to what they had given me. A younger, angrier Emma might have wanted that. But standing there, I realized I did not need to become cruel to prove they had been cruel. I only needed to stop absorbing the cost of their choices. "You will pay every outstanding charge," I said. "You will correct every violation at your own expense. You will communicate through Meredith, not through guilt, not through Mom, not through family pressure. Lauren and Travis will stop using the space until it is legally cleared. Dad will provide originals for every document connected to Grandma's name. And none of you will ever speak to me like I am beneath you again." My mother sobbed. "And Christmas?" she asked. "Can we talk about Christmas?" I looked past her at the restaurant windows, glowing warm against the New Year's Eve dark. Once I would have given anything to be invited inside and loved properly. That night I realized I no longer wanted a seat at any table where my dignity was the entertainment. "No," I said, "not tonight." Then I turned and walked away. By midnight, while fireworks cracked over the harbor, my phone kept lighting up. "Mom, please pick up. I didn't mean it." Lauren, "Hey sis, this isn't funny anymore." Dad, "We need to fix this as a family." Travis did not text, which was probably the smartest thing he had done all year. I did not answer any of them. The next week, they paid more than they expected, corrected more than they wanted, and apologized more publicly than they ever thought they would. My mother posted a new family message online, not naming the business dispute, but admitting that words spoken for laughs can cause real harm. My father signed a statement through council confirming that North Lantern Holdings had full authority over the building. Lauren sent me a long apology that sounded imperfect, embarrassed, and for once, specific. I did not forgive them right away. Forgiveness is not a door people get to kick open just because consequences are waiting outside. It is something earned slowly, with changed behavior, not desperate messages after the power shifts. I kept my apartment above the old print shop for another 6 months, not because I had to, but because I liked remembering that wealth does not always announce itself, and dignity does not need a luxury address. Eventually, I renovated the second floor of Harborline Row into my own office. On the wall, I framed a simple sentence from my grandmother's last card to me: "Never confuse being quiet with being small." That became my lesson. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not yelling back at people who humiliate you. It is building quietly, learning deeply, protecting yourself legally, and becoming so steady that their insults can no longer reach the part of you they used to control. Family can be blood, but blood is not a license to belittle, exploit, or silence someone. Real love does not require you to shrink so others can feel tall. And if the people closest to you only respect you after discovering what you own, then they never respected you in the first place. So if you are listening to this while carrying the weight of a family that laughs at your dreams, learn from Emma's story. Get educated. Understand your rights. Build your skills. Keep records. Save quietly. Move wisely. Do not waste your whole life begging people to see your worth when you could be using that same energy to create a life where their approval is no longer the roof over your head.
From my point of view, Emma's story is powerful because she didn't need to scream, beg, or expose anyone in a messy way. She simply let the truth speak for itself. Her family thought her quiet life meant weakness, but it was actually discipline, patience, and preparation. I think many people can relate to being underestimated by the people who should have supported them most. Emma's revenge was not about destroying her family. It was about finally refusing to carry the cost of their disrespect. What would you have done if your own family humiliated you at Christmas dinner like that? Would you forgive them? Or would you walk away and protect your peace?